For now, we have to put the drinking aside and focus on our bets and the race itself. So let's bring in Caton Bredar, analyst for TVG, the Horse Racing Network. She has been with TVG since launched in 1999. Caton, thanks for being with us. And the first question I have for you is, I'm curious, when I look at the different horses in this race and Zandon is the favorite, what is it about this horse in particular that makes him special and why a lot of people believe he's going to win it?
Well, it's a great question. I actually feel he can win it as well. He's my pick. And I believe he was made favorite, in fact, over another horse everyone expected to be favorite, Epicenter, because he has done the most and the best recently. He won April 9th in the Bluegrass, which was one of the big major preps, and he did it really easily. So I think that's most apparent in everybody's mind. But also he drew a perfect post position 10, right toward the middle of the field. He is doing exceptionally well. He's just a beautiful horse. I mean, he actually looks like Black Beauty out there. He's not technically black, but he looks black. And he's just covered the ground beautifully and trained super. And his trainer, Chad Brown, who's never won a Derby, has a lot of confidence in him. It just seems to be a horse that's getting good at just the right time. And also his running style suggests that he'll handle 1.25 miles. Of course, it's a mystery for everybody in there, as none of them have run that far, but I think that he'll probably be just as effective at the distance. So I think those are the reasons that people are falling for him. But this is a year where you can truly make a case for about 6 or 7 horses, and it's very hard to throw anybody out. It's an atypically competitive year. It's always a tough race, but this year I really feel like you could have one of the longest shots on the board win, and I wouldn't be totally shocked.
Past 3 years, the favorite has not won. So we're looking for value, and we're looking for a long shot to maybe make a good return on our investment. So what are some long shot plays that maybe have a shot here?
There's a horse called Cyberknife. He drew post 16, and he won the Arkansas Derby at 1.125 miles really easily. It wasn't a fast time, so there are a lot of naysayers in the group, but the way he did it suggests to me he's another one that's really on the improve, and he's looked great. He's a son of Gunrunner, who was a horse of the year and who finished 3rd in the Kentucky Derby and then went on to hardly ever get beat and was one of the best horses of the generation. And so this horse kind of reminds me of Gunrunner, but he's farther along in his progression than Gunrunner was at this time. So I think he's got an excellent chance. He's 20-1 on the morning line. I don't know if you're going to get 20-1, but he's going to be a better price than some of the others in here. And I really think he has a very good chance. And the connections, Brad Cox and Florent Giroux, are the connections that through the disqualification last year ended up as the official Derby winners, with Mandaloun, who was a long shot last year as well. He finished 2nd, but ran a beautiful race. So even though technically this wouldn't be the first Derby win for the team, I know that they would consider it their first official Derby win where they crossed the wire in front and got to enjoy all of it. So there's kind of an added storyline there.
We're talking with Caton Bredar, analyst for TVG, the Horse Racing Network, and she was born into the sport, granddaughter of a Hall of Fame jockey. Caton, let's talk about jockeys for a second, because when you're handicapping horse races or looking at who may win or who may not, certainly the jockey is a factor, whoever is atop the horse. But how much of a factor is it? How much do you put into whoever's riding?
Well, you've got to have the horse. They call it horse racing for a reason. And instead of jockey racing, jockeys can do a perfect ride. And if they don't have the horse underneath them, they're not going to win the race. So I think it's more horse than jockey. But when you have 20 horses and you have a need to know exactly how fast the horses on the lead are going and such, jockeys with experience who are among the best in the world are going to maybe be able to make those split-second decisions that sometimes can make a difference in the race. In the past, we've seen Johnny Velasquez just make the decision to go to the front when nobody else did. And that decision right out of the starting gate is what can lead to victory. So jockeys are important, and you've got some of the best jockeys literally in the world riding. Even a long shot like Crown Pride, who comes in from Japan, his jockey, Christophe Lemaire, is riding in his first Derby, but he's won big races all over the world. So It's kind of a world-class cast of jocks. And I can't think that there's any jockey in here who would be considered, a hindrance because of the caliber of the competition and the jockeys that have been attracted to the race. But the guys who have ridden it before probably have a little bit of an edge. So say Joel Rosario, who's on the 3 Epicenter and was the Eclipse Award-winning champion jockey last year, he knows exactly what to expect. And it's one of those situations where you kind of expect the unexpected and play off of what happens. But the ability to kind of keep cool and focus on that and having done it before all comes into play.
All right, Caton, so we've got some rain in the forecast. How do the conditions of the track kind of change your viewpoint on some of these horses?
Well, there's one horse in particular that I watched that if it is sloppy or wet for race time, then I think that his chances improve a lot, because I really believe he absolutely loves it. And that's the 8 Charge It for Todd Pletcher. He was second to White Abarrio in the Florida Derby, but I think he's a talented horse, but to me, he seemed like in training on mud, he loved it better than anybody else. I never saw a horse who looked as happy out there and covered the ground as beautifully as he did when it got in those conditions. So he's a horse that maybe I wasn't going to use as much, that I'm definitely going to throw on my tickets if it's wet. And I think that if you take a look at, bloodlines and things like that, that can sometimes give you a little clue. Most of these horses have never competed on a wet track, but there are a few who have and who have shown that they don't like it. A horse like Crown Pride, who I mentioned from Japan, I like quite a bit, but if it's wet, I don't know that I'll use him, because his only bad race was on a muddy track.
We're chatting with Caton Bredar, who works for TVG, the Horse Racing Network. She has been with them since 1999, certainly knows what she's talking about here. When you look at these horses, Caton, and I hear this a lot, where you watch a horse and how the horse is working out and how the horse is taking to the track. When you think about how you're going to bet or what horses you're going to use, how much do you take away from watching a horse work?
For me, it's a big part of the puzzle, because it's something that I have an advantage in, I hope, over someone who doesn't have the opportunity to watch them or have the experience to watch them. And so, there are a lot of people who can be successful without doing that. But for me, it's a big part of the puzzle. And I grew up around it. So that is part of the fun to watch them and see if they look like they're developing mentally and physically. There's just little signs in their training that sometimes can show you that. And every once in a while, there's a sign that maybe a horse is tailing off a little. And unlike human athletes who could kind of tell you, how they're feeling, you kind of have to interpret it based on what you see on the racetrack. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them, but just like human athletes, they do get stressed by outside factors, or they get, in a rut where physically they just aren't quite up to where they have been at their best if they've had a series of races. So for me, it's an important factor, but there are a lot of people who don't pay any attention to how the horses look. They just kind of go off the past performances and they do very well. So I always say, do what works for you and trust your instincts. But I feel that when you watch them, you get a sense right off the bat if the horse is feeling, like on top of his game and comes in almost like a prize fighter on their toes and is able to handle the stress of big crowds and all the anxiety and excitement and emotion that surround races like the Kentucky Derby. Some can and some just can't handle that. And I think when you watch them, you get a sense of that.